So there are at least 4 types of regressions. So I'm kind of blocking them off a little bit in chunks and types so you can kind of recognize them when you look at them. The first one is where you're given points. Like the points are just given. You don't have to make up any points. Today I hinted towards the fact that we can find a third point if we have enough information. In this case, you don't need to worry about it. It's all provided, right? So points are provided by the question. So that one is a very popular one, even in grade 12 applied. So you should at least be able to look at it and know what to do. Okay. So an airplane performs a stunt at an air show. It consists of a sudden drop followed by a rapid increase in height. So we can imagine sudden drop and then goes back up, right? Something like that. The stunt ends when the plane reaches its initial altitude. Altitude is the same thing as height. The table below shows the heights at different times. So you kind of imagine the plane is flying, right? But for us, it starts here, right? When the descent happens, you reach that lowest point, and the stunt stops when you're back at the same height than when you started. So you can kind of imagine this scenario, okay? A, determine the equation that models the height of the plane over time. I want you to write this down because this is the other wording that you're going to see. You want the height as a function of time. Whatever follows function as a function of, right? Whatever follows that is our x variable. And what you start with is your y variable, okay? So don't let that scare you if it says height as a function of time or profit as a function of sales. It doesn't matter. It's just telling you, you know what to expect, right? So let's figure out the equation. We're going to do that. I think I'm going to do that here, A. You go over here and you let the first row, we're never going to change that on you. The first row represents our x variables, and the second row is our y variable. Okay. So every single point is going to be time and height. So let's do the regression. You go ahead and type this in. Because the numbers are bigger. So type this in, it's going to be different. Every regression is going to be different. Some are very, you do the zoom stat, boom, it's perfect, everything shows up. Some of them, you only see a part of the picture. Okay, so go ahead and do this. So we're all kind of walking through this together. Once we have the equation, I can let go of your hand and you can do your own thing, right? Once we have the equation, we're back to word problems as usual. So 2, 6, 8, notice how it jumps, right? It's just random all over the place at times. Here we go. I'm going to go to my main window, run this. Oh, we can do it. Yeah, we can run this, okay. There's my equation. 9.38. Wait a minute, does it make sense that it's positive? A is positive? Based on what's happening? A should be positive, right? Because if A is positive, the parabola is pointing up, so we're good, okay? So it's one of the rare instances where it's not negative. That's why I use this on purpose, right? So that you're not always expecting a positive. Then it's 1,080. Okay, let's graph this, because once you have the equation, let's face it, you're gonna have to see it on your screen. I'm gonna try zoom stat. So I'm gonna press zoom. Are we gonna expect a perfect zoom? Never. Never expect a perfect zoom. That's where you come in. So I'm gonna go zoom stat. It's not working. Help me out. What's my problem that zoom stat is not working? What needs to be on? Plot 1, yeah. Y equals? So, right, this is going to happen to you. So I don't want you to panic. Just be like, oh, okay, let's try this again. I'm going to go zoom 9 right away, and there it is. Okay, I see my points. It's not a good window. Listen carefully, please. This is going to solve most of your issues. X min, go to negatives. Always make that a little bit into the negative, because you're going to make sure you see your y-axis if you make that negative. So go to X min, and let's change that to -5. It will depend on the scenario. I'm going to try -5. I'm also going to go to Y min and make that negative. Let's go negative. Because the numbers are so big, I'm going to go -10 there. Okay. And I'm going to graph it again before I change anything else. So just the mins have been changed. And now you see your y-axis, you see your x-axis. That's what you want. Now we're going to make other changes. So we want to see more towards the top. What are we going to change? Y max. Here's where you can predict what it should be. What should it be? What's my initial height? Look at here. Where's my pencil here? We know that our y-intercept, our initial height is 1,080, right? So we should change that to probably 1,100, 1,200, 1,500, something that's bigger than this. Let's go 1,200. I'm going to hit graph. Right? The point of this was to see the y-intercept. Okay, we're doing good. No x-intercepts. You notice that, right? What else should I change? I should definitely change the x max so that I see how it drops and then goes back to the original height. So I'm going to go window, x max. I'm going to go 30. Let's try that. And there it is. So those points, you can see them. You need a minimum of 3 points, right? In this case, the question gave you 4. And it was only to get you started. It's not a perfect window using zoom stat, okay? Zoom stat, why I also want you to use it is if you make a mistake on your points, one of them is gonna be way off. Like one point may like be way off here. You know you probably typed it in wrong, okay? It probably didn't, you didn't do you made a mistake there. So this is, if you wanna look at my window one more time, right? Important thing is make sure, I will make a note here. Note, after zoom stat, okay, change x comma y min to negatives. Okay, that's, I'm just gonna cloud this in. That way you know, okay, if you go through this page, right, it will remind you, okay, I need to make sure my window is good. Okay. All right. B. What's B asking for? I'm going to do that here. What's the initial height of the plane at the start of the stunt? This will be the y-intercept. And my y-intercept, based on this equation that I found, is 1,080. So you will just say 1,080 feet, because we're measuring height in feet, right? There you go. See? How long did the stunt last? How would you do this? Right. Axel's saying Y2, let Y2 be 1,080. Why so? Because that's where my stunt starts, right? At that initial height. And if I draw my line 1,080 like this, it will hit the curve on this other side. So when it hits it here again, that's when everything stops, right? So that's what we're going to do. Y2 is equal to 1,080. And then we're going to go second, trace, intersect. Hit graph, second trace 5. I'm going to go over to this one here. That's the one I'm interested in. Enter, enter, enter. And this would be 19.599, right? So 19.60 seconds. And if you need to have a little visual, right? This is the line, y is equal 1080. Okay, so this is start here, and this is the end of the stunt. So we're basically finding from 0 till this, right? That time that elapsed is 1960. So we figured that out. Okay. What is the plane's lowest height? What would we be finding there? Vertex. Okay, okay, let's do that. Second, trace min. You got to go to the left of it. To the right of it. So my min, write down the coordinate when you find a point, because you may use it for your graph. Okay, so that's why I always write down my coordinates. So this will be 9.80, and this is 179.63. Let me just bring that up a little bit. So it would be 179.63 feet is my answer for D. E, graph the scenario. Sure. The reason I'm always graphing with you is because it's important to do this right. Okay, it is important to have your scale and everything right. So I've tried to have a couple of examples, right? And notice what I always start with, the easiest part. The easiest part, label, time and height. Make sure you have units. Okay, there we go. Now I need a scale. How far do I need to go along the X? 19, right? 19.60, so 20 basically. So let's see here, 5, 10, 15, 20. That works just fine. And along the Y, 1080, right? That's, I have to make sure I account for that. So let's try here, 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200. So I'm going to go up by 200. Consistent scale. Okay. 1,080. You have to think that this is 1,100, right? Right in between is 1,100. So 1,080 is just a little lower. You go to your vertex, which is at 980. And it goes all the way down to 179. Somewhere in here. And at almost 20, which is 1960, we're going to go back to 1,080. So just make sure you line up with your initial point right there. Hold it. Could you use these points here? Could you use these points to graph? Absolutely. If you want to make them show up and have more points to connect, go for it. It's not necessary, but you can definitely use those if you'd like. And so then you just go to the bottom of this and to the top, and don't forget your equation. 9.38 x squared minus 183.75 x plus 1,080. Mm-hmm.
How did you get 19.60 seconds?
19.60 this. I drew a line because this story tells me, you know how normally when you throw a rock, you throw it up and then it stops when it hits the ground. In this case, there's no ground, right? So we're told that it starts at 1,080 and it stops when it gets to 1,080 again. So I made y2 equal to 1,080, and then you see that line there. So I found that intersection. Second trace 5. That's close enough. Enter, enter, enter.
Oh, so you looked at the second one.
Yeah, not the first one. The first one is 0. Okay, domain and range. Your favorite 2 words, right? Domain and range. What's the domain here? Starts at 0, right? Time-wise. Stops at whenever it gets here, right? So that is 1960, 19.6. And just for fun, and then the range, what's the range? What's the lowest height? Is 179.63. I will say this. I happen to have asked you for it before. Okay? I just need you to know that if you want the range, you need the vertex. Okay? You need to figure that out regardless. So 179.63, and the highest point is 1,080. So that'd be, sorry, not 0, 179.63 and 1,080. Okay. We need to finish off with G. How long was the plane at or above 800 feet? Make sure you write this down. I'm going to make sure that you can see it. Sorry, before I forget. Otherwise, they're going to give me heck later for not doing that. Sorry, you need to make sure you understand this part. I hope you understand at least that you're going to have to graph the y is equal to 800 line, correct? That's where the focus is on. The next step is to find the time where you first get to the 800 line and the time where you get back on the way up, you hit that 800 mark again. So let's go time 1, and we're going to call this time 2. For the sake of time, I'm just going to give you those, okay? This is 1.6653. So the plane gets to the 800 feet mark after 1.66 seconds. And then on the second time on the way up, that one is 17.9346 seconds. Let me zoom into that because it's very small, I know. Okay. When you subtract the 2, I know this is basically the weekend and you're like, I just want to get out of here, right? But let's see if I can get one last bit out of your brains. If I subtract that, would that answer the question? Make sure you write it down and then you can look up, because I want this, correct? I want to find out how long were you above. Okay? When you subtract these two, you're finding the little cap here, the time spent below. Okay? So when you do that, you get 16.2693 seconds. However, you're finding the cap. Where is the cap? The cap is below 800, correct? You want whatever is above. How would you go about this? What's the total flying time? 1960, right? Time above 1960 minus this here. And you get 3.33 seconds. That is the ultimate. I'll circle that. That's the ultimate answer here. Very tricky, I know. Very tricky. But remember, when you subtract, you're finding the cap. Ask yourself, where is the cap? Is the cap where I want it to be? If it's not, then you need to go total minus whatever the cap was. Here's your homework. It's a long weekend, so I don't want to ruin it, but I need you to try at least 2 questions. 50 to 51, okay? I would expect to have both of these pages filled out. I'm okay if you tell me I got some mistakes or I didn't know what to do here, but you should have at least attempted it, okay? Thank you, guys.